able to use a punch as a prying tool, and I was able to pry along the slot. I could get under this washer. Now the first flange I did was here, and it just bent. It deformed, permanently deformed here, and which is a good sign. It meant I could at least deform this thing. But this one actually, focus here. This side actually started coming out, and so boom, we got it. So the lock washer is not as difficult to take out as I thought. It's starting to come out. I hate to do this, but I'm going to pry. Oh yeah, this hub is wanting to come out now. Oh, okay. So it looked like this cotter pin, and that's not the right term. It'll come to me later. Was holding this hub on, but it's not. The hub actually has slots also. So you can just pry that plastic hub off once you get the lock washer off. Now, this is interesting. Let me give you a close-up. You now have not only this misnamed cotter pin going across the slot. Oh, come on. But you also have another lock washer. Another lock washer on the inside, on the interior side of the shaft, holding the main wheel on. Okay, I believe this is a little better. As you can see here, once we got that black hub with the needle on it removed, the axle still has this cotter pin through the slot, and it's got a lock washer on the inside side of that cotter pin holding the main wheel on. Okay, let's see what happens here. Oh, here we go. So we got the axle out without removing the cotter pin or this lock washer, which is good because I don't want to have to remember the order these things go on. So I'm just going to leave this, and hopefully I'll remember that it just goes straight in there. So let's see what we have here. So we gently remove the wheel. The wheel is not symmetrical, so the outer hub is smooth and the inner hub has the slot, which is not intuitive since we just screwed around with a slotted axle on this side. But let's try to remember, the slot in the main wheel here goes on the inside, and it makes sense because it's got this washer slash bushing that has these nubbies on it. Obviously that's what turns. Got a nice white powder. My luck is probably asbestos. And so let's remember that. Remember the white washer, then the main wheel. I need to figure out the diameter to drill out these 7 plastic semi-permanent fasteners, if you will, to my 11/64. And maybe that'll do the trick. Yeah, that's the one where I'm getting some black plastic coming out as cuttings. And that might be the sign that you're deep enough. Okay, that felt a little bit more efficient, but again, it's not exactly popping apart. Okay, I got some wood shims here. in an attempt to be gentle, I'm going to use those to keep it pried open. Yeah, there's some kind of access hole right here, which made it easy to kind of get into. Man, that does feel like something's about to break though. And there's not a whole lot you can do. It looks like these two broke apart, but the others are being stubborn. Yeah. Hate screwing up those fastener holes because we may end up needing them later. Okay, that helped. Here we go, here we go. Now, another problem with small plastic devices that you open like this is sometimes the internal stuff is not held in other than the housing. And if you're holding it at a weird angle as you open it, stuff falls out. You don't know how it went in there. All right. So the handle came out. That's good. Holes are not mangled too badly. I take that back. I see where they're grabbing into. We may have to repair that. But fortunately, the actual housing, yeah, looks intact here. There's some kind of anti-theft tag in here. We'll get that later. Okay, so there's a mechanism here, and it just pulls out according to instructions. So is it? Oh, we got buttons here. So how are we going to do that? You press the buttons as they come out. But there's the battery. I can see it right there. It's a standard, what is it, 2326 watch battery or whatever they are. And it looks like this thing is hinged as if it, oh no, there's no hinges, but it looks like it can be pried open easily. Let's see what we have here. Okay, what I'm doing is I'm squeezing the side of the bigger part of the case. Let's call this the cap, the smaller half of it, if you will. And oh, look at that. So you just squeeze the big portion as you pull up this cap, and it comes right off. Okay, so try to remember, we're going to put this back. So we got a loose, let me get the camera on here. So we have a loose silica gel just floating around in there. Oh, do not eat. Remember that. Now, I'm sure you can buy silica gel, and I guess I'll order some from Amazon to put it back in here. But yeah, it looks like a lot of times you'll go through all this hassle to replace a battery and a non-replaceable battery item just to find out they've welded the battery to the motherboard or circuits. But in this case, it looks like it's clipped on. It looks like there's a piece of All right, so for what it looks like there's this Y bracket. It doesn't look like it's permanently installed. It looks like it has 3 little clips that go into these holes, and it's part of the circuit because it's touching the battery, but it looks like it'll come off. So, oh, that did it. Okay, so there's these little barbs on the outside of this leg of the Y. So you really need to squeeze the leg together and lift up to remove the battery. So anyway, that seemed to work. Okay, I'm trying to keep the other 2 legs in. Okay, we got the battery out. Now, another thing we need to remember, it was the big flat, I think this is the positive side of the battery that was looking at it. So let's remember that. It's a CR2032. CR2032. Fortunately, I think that's a common battery size, and I think I have it. So I'm going to run get it real quick. Okay, I've got a brand new CR2032 battery. I'm peeling the backing off. And as we remember, the positive side was facing us. So I'm going to slip it under. And I'm guiding the legs back in the hole on this Y bracket. That's pretty neat. So those barbs lock it in place, and I wouldn't even think to do this, except that the part originally had some tape on it. Okay, so I'm going to put a strip of tape across the entire assembly. Could have made it a little longer. The main part is that the original tape taped the bracket to the battery, but I want mine to tape a little bit to the board. Yeah, I guess I could have made it longer, but I like that. So the next, we got a new battery. Oh, I was going to put a new silica gel in there. Let me see if I can't find a recent one, and I'm actually going to order some from Amazon. I'm going to use a standard 2-part epoxy. This is a 5-minute setting, which is fine. This is a tube I've used before, so it's okay. 2-part epoxy. These dispensers are ingenious now. You can't help but distribute the 2-part epoxy in exactly 2 parts. Man, I need to clean that cap. You generally don't use too much epoxy at any one time unless you got a big project. I'm going to leave that out for now. You mix it thoroughly together. The good thing about epoxy, as I mentioned earlier, is it's one of the toughest adhesives. It's got a lot of history. It's been around for decades, if not over 100 years. And unlike, say, super glue or some other glues, this is actually can be used as a filler. Although to me it's always an expensive type of filler. Okay, that's one. You know what, I'm gonna have 2 different batches here. That's the clear one, and I'm gonna have another that I'm gonna mix with sawdust. And the reason for that is, no matter how carefully you try, or it would take too long, even if you could do it accurately, to whittle these wood pieces right here to exactly fit the corners and to fill all the voids, because the bottom surface is curved, and so one of the things you don't want to do is leave any voids. Now technically you could use just clear epoxy. The problem with that is it's runny, and again, I'm not a real big fan of the properties of hardened epoxy. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll take sawdust, and this is real dust from an orbital sander, and it's specifically hardwood. Anytime I do maple or oak, I save that dust. In my mind, it probably doesn't matter, but in my mind I always think it's a better dust than regular pine wood, which is so soft. Another advantage of using sawdust is it stretches your, if you're cheap like me, it stretches your epoxy, so you get a little bit more out of it. But the main reason is to thicken it up so it's not quite as runny. I don't know if you can really get too much sawdust in there. Okay, and the reason I have both clear, I probably could do without the clear, but what I'm going to do for this, well, one of the more difficult ones is going to be this one, because it doesn't have a backside to it. Can y'all see this? Yeah. So I'm getting this sawdust paste on here. Be sure I fill the voids. And technically, I guess you could just use sawdust paste and build it up. But I'm not a fan, like I said, I'm not a fan of the properties, okay, here we go, of just pure epoxy. Anytime you get a choice, I try to use solid wood. So I'm going to do these two right angle sides, and I forgot to put on my latex gloves. I'll regret that. Alright, see, already I can't get it into that acute angle. Alright, one of the things I'm doing is be sure it doesn't stick up any higher than the plastic. I'm not going to stick it up any higher than the ribs here, on the assumption that it needs to be the same level. And I guess I could do a big one on this side. Let me do that. Am I going out of the camera frame? Yeah, almost. Let me move a little bit. What I'm doing is dabbing my slurry of epoxy and sawdust in those locations I haven't covered yet. Now, on the first time I did this yesterday, one side is done fairly well, but I was in a rush. Things started drying faster than I thought they would. So I thought I'd stick with just a slurry this time. See that this has got some wood in it, but this side does not. So if this doesn't dry too quickly, I will stab these voids where I put the glue. Stab them with some toothpicks or these craft sticks. Because real wood is a much better base. See, this side here has not been done at all, so I'm using this slurry around each side. Yeah, in lieu of drilling into pure epoxy or even this slurry of sawdust and epoxy, I'd much rather drill into actual wood that's epoxy to the plastic. So I'm going to try to put as much wood, actual wood, as I can. Okay, one of my jobs is to quit screwing with it once I apply it. Okay, here it is dried. I'm just going to cut them flush. I used a combination of appetizer sticks, craft sticks or whatever, and toothpicks and chunks of wood. I'm going to do one more touch up of some of these gaps with a slurry of epoxy and sawdust, and do this again. This is going to be fun. Yeah, the epoxy doesn't cut like wood, even when you mix a lot of wood with it. Wood inserts, they're just about dried. I'm going to go ahead and use my Japanese saw to cut them flush. It's mostly toothpicks sticking up. Again, we're just trying to get a blob of material to allow these wood screws to go into. I almost forgot to put the handle in. I was in a panic because I had already closed everything up and remembered that no, the handle is it's held in with two of the screws. And I'm using this clamp to kind of hold it in place till we're ready to close it up. Okay, the silica gel packets finally came in. What you want are the 2 ounce. I ordered both 2 ounce and 20 ounce. I wasn't sure how big is too big, and it turns out 20 ounce was too big to fit into the electronic compartment here, but the 2 ounce worked out real well. So this is a brand new gel silica gel. I don't know how long it'll last, but anything's better than nothing. So putting it back together, trick is to be sure the measuring wheel is in the grooves. One regret I have is that I did not cover the compartment while I had it wide open, and I'm afraid dust and sawdust could have gotten in there. Well, I was testing it, sliding it in and pushing on the buttons, be sure I didn't catch them, and slid it on in, and it popped into place. Normally I would pull it out and recreate it for the video, but it is in there pretty dang tight. I should have cut away a little bit more wood. It was really deflecting on that. But once it got past my wood repair, my wood inserts, it's sitting normally on the plastic now. So anyway, we're on our way to reassembling this Trumeter. Before I attempt to put these 2 halves back together, one of the things I want to check is to be sure, for one thing, that I got the proper length screw. I tried measuring what would be the correct depth using calipers. Calipers have almost all of them have an extension that's really nice. It lets you check depth. However, these have a deep recess, a counterbore almost like into the plastic, and so you can't really, so the head of the fastener is actually going to be way below the surface, as it's going to be sitting almost towards the bottom of the hole here. So there's no easy way to measure the length screw you need. So the best way to do it is find a screw, and I'm starting with 1/2 inch, and I'm dropped it in there. Make sure it bottoms out with a screwdriver. Turn it a few times, be sure it's really bottomed out. And then I'm looking at it, and a couple things I'm looking at. One is I don't want it too far. I don't want it to go deeper than it has to go. And I also I want to be sure it pokes out at least a good 3/16 to, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch minimum, to maybe even up to, I don't know, 1/2 an inch would be a little far, I suppose. But these are 1/2 inch fasteners. The bottom of the hole has a flange width that's pretty significant. I'm sure it's about the same as the rest of the housing, such that a 1/2 inch hole is only sticking up about 3/16. So that's not too bad. That's about the correct depth. Now the other thing I'm looking at is, see, it's cockeyed, and that's due to the fact that when I drilled out the plastic insert, the drill got cockeyed drilling into it. You want those screws to be as straight as possible. So what I'm going to do is go back with a smaller drill bit. This is a 1/8 inch diameter drill bit, and I'm going to try to clean up these holes and try to make them straighter. In a lot of cases there's still some plastic flashing left over that's in the way, so I'm going to try to clean that up. Yeah, it snapped into place pretty well. Looks like we got a good fit here. I don't see any gapping if I get reasonable pressure on it. So this time I'm going to use a few clamps to hold it together in tape, and then we'll drill the pilot holes and then put in the wood fasteners. To clarify, I've got the handle in here. There were 4 holes that were lined up for the handle. 2 of the holes are related to the fasteners. Yeah, these 2 bigger ones. Let's see if you can see this. Yeah, this one and this one will have fasteners through them. These were, I don't recall removing any fasteners from these. What I did was install the handle, clamped it in, and I inserted toothpicks with epoxy to keep these 2 here, and I also filled this hole, which we'll drill a pilot through once we put this together. So anyway, let me go get some clamps and some more blue tape, and we will tape these 2 halves together, drill the pilot holes, and put in the semi-permanent wood fastener. So we got the 2 halves together. I've got them taped, and it looks like it's a good fit. And so now we're ready to drill the pilot holes. What I want to do is put a drill stop so I don't go too deep. Right now, just to give you an idea, let me see if I can do this. For instance, I'm sliding down the side here. There's the bottom of the hole before it even leaves that housing. So that's over 1/2 an inch. That's almost 3/4 of an inch. So 3/4 of an inch, and I want at least another 1/2 inch. So I need a drill stop right about there. Now you can get fancy drill stops, but I think I'm just going to use tape. I'm going to tape it right about there. And the beauty about tape is if you miscalculated, you can always push it a little deeper. Like that. That looks like it might be too shallow. They say the way to do this with tape is to get one wrap and then double up your tape. And what it does is it makes a little flag, and it makes it easier to see. Instead of having to look at the edge of your drill bit, you see this flag here that tells you how deep you are. Just out of curiosity, let's measure that. And this is tough one-handed. And that is, oh, it's just over an inch, which I think I want a little deeper than that. So I'm going to go a little deeper. I need to be 1 1/8 really. So anyway, let's see what happens here. Yeah, I see a lot of epoxy, and that's okay. And that went through something, whatever it was that we put there. All right, that was that solid wood that was in the way, sliding the electronic box in. Trying to be sure my hand's not in the way. It should not go through, and I should not be putting a drill through my hand, but let's be sure. And that didn't feel right. I might have to go back on that one. Yeah, oops, and that did go through. So, see, I'm at the narrow end here, and I was aggressive. That wasn't feeling, these last two didn't feel right. I think what's happened is I actually hit the plastic internal stiffeners, and that's okay. It should be surrounded by epoxy and wood. And did I don't think I popped through. Same thing here. These three, I felt like I was drilling on plastic, and that's okay. There's nothing we can do about it. It's not necessarily a bad thing. So anyway, here we go with our fasteners. Now you could change out your drill slash driver and do it with your battery operated driver set, but this is you don't want to overdo it and crack something. You want to do this by hand. It's a little bit more tedious, but it's going to be a lot safer. That fell right in the hole, because you want to be able to feel, okay, is the screw actually grabbing, and has the screw bottomed out? And I hate to think I used too big a drill bit. Now you don't want to do that. You don't want to. That's tightening up a little bit. So let's go to the next one. You don't need to really get on it here. Now number 6 fastener, a good pilot should generally be a 1/8. You might go smaller though. This does seem like it's a little loose. Yeah, don't get on it too much, because that epoxy, I don't know how many days it takes to really get to 100%, and this has only been 2 or 3 days since I applied it. So for all I know, it might still be in the pasty 50% strength range. And you don't want to start tightening up these fasteners to the point that you destroy the foundation that you're screwing into. You can always go back and re-tighten if you see this thing opening up. If you accidentally use too big a pilot hole bit, or you overdo the fasteners and you know that you destroyed the foundation, something you can do without breaking the whole thing apart is I suggest epoxy, and get toothpicks and wet the toothpicks in the epoxy and just stab them in there until you can't pack any more toothpicks. Then what you do is you cut those toothpicks flush after everything's hardened, and go back with another fastener. Problem with that is this recess really screws things up, you would have to use a longer fastener. Okay, just for you know what, that fastener didn't go deep enough, I don't think. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, this one either. Yeah, take a look at your fastener heads. If they look like they're a little bit too shallow, what you were feeling is the fastener head against the side of the recess, not really the screw eating into the wood. Okay, and we got the housings together. Feels fairly tight. Got the handle in there. Okay, going by memory, and what I recall is the white bushing. Okay, this white bushing goes into this recess. Oh, and you can feel it when it catches in the knot. Got our bushing, but then the wheel goes in, and I remember the slot goes on the inside. So there's their wheel. And I remember, well, let's go ahead and get the axle in there. So the axle goes in, and I remember we pried this off and took the axle out afterwards. So we've got that part. Okay. Yeah, I'm turning the wheel slightly so that it catches in those notches. I didn't realize how close. I guess that cleans the wheel. That's kind of interesting. So we're almost there. It looks like we never had to remove this lock washer, and looks like it's right up against the wheel, so that's good. So we're practically there. We merely have to put this needle thing in. And you know, I don't remember what the needle was for. So that went in. And the only thing we lack is this last lock washer, which, how did so was it on top? Yeah, I guess it was on top of that, what I keep calling the cotter pin. So these flanges are flexed outward, so I'm going to push it inward. Okay, I'm going to have to use my punch. Okay, I found a cylinder that should work. It's a 5/16 socket. And it seems to fit perfectly, so I'm going to give it a try. Oh, and that did the trick. Now try not to pound on it a lot, because the axle, I'm sure, being in a plastic housing, there's no telling what will happen. So this needle indicator thing is, you can set it, but anyway, we're finished. It's we got it all put together. Let's be sure it comes on. Oh, look at that. Reset. We're going to use feet and inches, and it seems to be working fine. So everything's working. So the question is, Mark, would you do that again? You know what, in 5 years if the battery goes out on this, I just might have to splurge and buy a new one. That was just a little bit more work than I anticipated. And on one hand, I'm glad that I was able to save the part and we're able to use it as is without throwing it away. But you got to account for the cost of the epoxy. That was about $4 to $5 worth of epoxy, and that's interesting. You don't turn it off. You just wait 15 minutes and it turns itself off. Okay, learned something new there. But anyway, and you got to figure out now. If I was working full time, I would just have trashed it and bought another one. But I'm semi-retired right now. I have plenty of time, so I guess it was worth it to, at least for this one time, to put a new battery in. So I hope y'all learned something, and hopefully this won't fall apart on us, and good luck with your Trumeter.